Did you know that 95% of the US population is metabolically unhealthy? It's probably the same in Canada and other developed countries. Now, what does this even mean? It's not metabolism, it's not how you digest your food. Poor metabolic health is a whole host of things not working well in your body that leads to pretty much every chronic disease. Now, we're talking about that today on Wellness by Design. My name is Jane Hogan. I'm the wellness engineer and your host. And my guest today is Dr. Marcelle Pick. Now, she's an OBGYN, passionate about women's health, and she's been working with women since 1983. She's been around for a while. She was doing functional medicine or root cause medicine before it was cool. So today we're talking about how you can improve your metabolic health, easy ways that you can do that, and then lower your risk for all kinds of health issues, including chronic pain. Lots of times people have chronic pain just because they're metabolically unhealthy. All right, I can't wait for you to hear the wisdom that's being shared by Dr. Marcelle Pick today. Let's dive in. I'll see you inside. Marcelle Pick, Dr. Marcelle Pick, welcome to Wellness by Design today. I love you, and I'm so happy that I've had a chance to meet you in person and that I get to do this conversation to share with our community today too. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I love doing this. I really do.
I can tell. I can tell. So Marcelle, you have been helping women, mostly women, for a long time now. What took you into this work that you're doing?
Wow, that's a complicated question. I grew up in the outback of Australia, and I spent a fair amount of time because it was the outback in Aboriginal caves. And it really gave me a different insight about life in general. We came to America when I was 11, and I was exposed to Edgar Cayce, which literally right up the road from me in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And I had a mother that was always looking at what are the other options. We didn't really talk about medications and things like that. She was kind of old school, if you will. And when I went to university, I made a decision very early on. I had one experience when I was hiking in which it was very clear to me that I needed to make a difference. So I got educated as a nurse practitioner and went to a program with Harvard Med so that my credentials would never be scrutinized. It was a very clear program that really afforded me a lot of my ability to be able to look at science with a critical mind.
Mm.
And very early in my career, I started a practice called Women to Women with Dr. Chris Northrup. And we were the first all women's practice in the country. We had to get special attorneys and all kinds of things because it was mostly men at the time, or some women were in there, but we were all women. And we knew at the very beginning that we wanted to be different. We wanted to incorporate, we did macrobiotics, we had cooking classes, we taught people about what it's like to grow up in an alcoholic family system and how that can actually cause problems later in life. And we did all of that from the very beginning of our practice. We were very, very different, incredibly fast growing practice. And we gave people their records when they came to see us. So any test results, we had them do, nice, any kind of charting for themselves. And that was way back before anybody was doing any of that. So I've always been interested in how can I teach people about their own well-being? And then I got introduced to functional medicine very, very early in my career. Again, that was probably 1987. 1988. And now I teach for the Institute of Functional Medicine, really looking at if you have a problem, what's the cause of that problem? What's behind the scenes? What's what we call upstream? Because diagnosing and treating is not the way it's going to work. And we have too many people now in our country that are so unhealthy because we're giving them a diagnosis, we're giving them a pill for every ill,
Yeah.
and that's not looking at what the real issue is upstream. That's a long-winded answer to your question.
There's stuff I learned that I didn't know about you, Marcel. So it's kind
Yeah.
of fun to hear that. And I didn't know that you had started your practice with that's Dr. Christiane Northrup, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was women to women, and we had that practice for a number of years. We had a lot of people that came and went to the practice that we taught about functional medicine. Everyone in our area in Maine started with us first.
And it sounds like you were, I mean, a lot of people now have heard of the ACEs score and, the adverse childhood events and how that can affect adult health. But it sounds like you were talking about that before that came along, right? And looking at
Hands
these root
down. Yeah.
causes and the emotional side of what, yeah, how that affects our physical health, which generally we don't hear much about that in conventional medicine. So, yeah, I mean, beautiful work that you were doing. And also, you came around to talking about the current state of health. You're in the US. I know, like, the rates of chronic disease are so high. Same in Canada. I think we're pretty similar. I live on the island of Newfoundland, and we have some of the highest rates of obesity, highest rates of cancer, just terrible metabolic health leading to other things. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about
Sure.
what do we mean by poor metabolic health? Because that's not something I heard about that in when I did my functional medicine coaching training, but that's not something a lot of people are hearing about metabolic health.
Well, I think we get it mixed up with metabolism. Your
Yeah.
metabolism's bad, so you can't lose weight, or your metabolism's bad. Well, unfortunately, it's a much bigger issue than that. So if we look at our country here in America, about 95% of the population is metabolically unhealthy. And what that means is, what we talk about is your metabolic system flexible? So you get exposed to a virus and you don't get it. You are eating 10% of the time foods that maybe are processed and you don't have a reaction to it. Most of us in the country are not that way. We're seeing blood pressure problems. We're seeing cholesterol issues. We're seeing obesity. And the obesity, unfortunately, started, if you look at a bell-shaped curve, you can actually superimpose it with processed foods. So we
Not
have a situation, not a surprise, in which the food industry has contributed to this in a great way. Now, the unfortunate part is the solution now in America in particular is Ozempic.
yeah.
That is not the answer. And the interesting thing about Ozempic is what it is doing is stopping people from eating. So it's affecting appetite more than anything else.
Yeah.
And they're losing weight because of it. So we really need to address that appetite issue, which we can get back to in a moment. So Ozempic, people are eating the same foods, which are not making them necessarily healthier with regards to their metabolic system. Now we are seeing people that are obese losing 50, 60 pounds. And yes, their heart disease is better, their kidney, blah, blah, blah. But that's because of the weight loss. On the other side of this, I have concerns their metabolic system's no better.
Right.
So if we're looking at things like blood pressure, even chronic pain, where is it coming from? Fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, people with endometriosis, people with menstrual cramps when they're younger, huge menopausal symptoms, osteoporosis, osteopenia. Those are all in the category of metabolic inflexibility. So we have to rehab then the system to help that become normalized. Now, the thing that's so interesting is we can do that. No matter what your age, no matter what, we can shift that dynamic. We can make your body less likely to get cancer by shifting dynamics. It is not genes. We talk about, well, it's my genes. We
Yeah.
can impact our genes by the thoughts that we think, the environment that we live in, the foods and the nutrients that we use. Oh my God, seriously? Absolutely. We have the
All,
science to support that.
all
So
within
it's
our
so
control.
important, totally in our control. But also, here's the part that I love that you said, and that is the ACE score. So that's adverse childhood events. So if you were young and you had a lot of adverse events, you learn how to behave in a certain way. Thank goodness, as a way to deal with the situations.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is so many people still use that behavior later in life. That's dysfunctional.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a perfectionist, it usually starts when you're younger. That no longer serves you because so many women don't know how to put themselves first. And they're trying to manage all these things at the same time at their own expense. So we see that people, especially women, when I say to them, I want you to take 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes a day, I've got kids, I've got this. It's like, but if you don't, we're teaching our children to do what we're doing. They watch what we do, not what we say. So all of these things play into changing our trajectory of our health long term. Wow, that's amazing. We can change it? Yes. The thoughts that we think, the food that we eat, the movement that we do. And also when people get stuck in this cycle of, oh my God, I can't stand it anymore. I hate this. I'm in so much pain. We have to shift that dynamic because when we rotate that memory over and over and over again, it changes our biochemistry,
Does, yeah.
then creates the same results.
Yeah. So interesting what you said there about those personality adaptations. That's what Gabor calls them. He calls them behavioral adaptations that we create when we're younger to cope with, trauma, mild trauma, big trauma. We've all had trauma. And I see it over and over again with the people that I work with too. It's people pleasing, perfectionism, the hyper independence, the hyper vigilance, inability to say no, all of those things. But people think it's their personality, but it's not their personality. It's an adaptation, which means that they can change it. And then they can change their physiology, right? So, what's the mechanism behind that, Marcelle? How does their physiology, the biochemistry change when they make these changes?
Well, we have to back up a little bit and talk about adrenals if we're going to help people understand that.
Okay, good.
We have two small glands on top of our kidneys, and they're called adrenals. We don't really talk about them very much. Now it's become popularized on social media, chronic fatigue or fatigue. The reality is that our adrenal glands are so important for us. We cannot live without our adrenals, and we need a little stress in our lives, but we don't need the enormity that so many people are having, which they look at the news, they look at social media, they have families, they have kids, they have jobs, they had COVID. I mean, it's just enormous now. And then for some people, it's a political environment. Now, I mean, it's so much stress. When you have elevated cortisol, what happens is it actually shifts all of the biochemistry in the body. It causes our hormones to be disarrayed. It causes more autoimmune disorders. It causes more immune dysfunction. It causes thyroid abnormalities. It causes digestive issues. This is just biochemistry.
Mm-hmm.
So if you imagine that you're a zebra and you're in the field eating and you get chased by a tiger, if you're not dead, you go back to that same field again. We humans, oh my God, did you see what happened? And I almost got killed. And we go on and on all day and maybe every day. And that's partly what we do with adverse childhood events.
Mm-hmm.
That continuous looping that goes on causes that cortisol to be elevated. And what happens then is all those biochemical reactions happen.
Right.
So as we learn about that and we change our personality, because that is what it requires, we don't respond in the same way. We don't behave in the same way. Our reactions are different. That changes our biochemistry, but also changes what happens to us and what comes to us in life as well. It's like this magnetic shift that changes. When I was in practice and I had patients that were very much poor me, I'm this way because of this, this, and this. My staff would come and say, oh my God, Susan's coming in today. And the reason they would say that is every time she came in, the computer didn't work. The fax didn't work. Her chart got lost. The form that I put in her chart wasn't there. I mean, it was consistent. So there is a relationship between how we are in the world and how our life, believe it or not, plays out.
Oh, I believe
Learning to shift.
Yeah.
That's going to be the question is how do we change our personality? How do we change the way we respond? And even people with chronic issues, it's baby steps. Let's change your diet. Let's stop the sugar. Let's stop the alcohol. Let's do some affirmations of gratitude in the morning. Let's go to bed. Even if at night you're saying, I have an amazing roof over my head. I have an incredible, it's warm today. I can breathe really well today. All those things can add up, even at the time of despair.
Mm. I love that you mentioned that, Marcelle. I mean, I'm a little bit in the woo kind of thing, as people call it, although it's not really woo woo to talk about energy because we know science has told us everything is energy. We know there's, if there's a force, there's an opposite force. So if we're putting out an energy of for me, as you call it, well, of course we're going to attract those kind of things. Do you have do you explain this to your patients or your clients, and then do you get much resistance on that? How do you
So
deal with that?
the way I explain it to people is, have you ever been on a train or a bus or an airplane?
Mhm.
And you walk down the aisle and there's somebody that has not said a word, but you don't want to go anywhere near them. The vibe they're giving off
Mhm.
is something that you don't, and certainly when you travel on a train or, subway, you have that experience. That's what I'm talking about is, so how do we live in our own bodies in a way that represents optimism, that represents happiness, joy? What I say to people is it's an inside job. One of the chapters in my book is our issues are in our tissues. And we know now that that's absolutely true, that we
Yep.
have to change many things, the food that we eat, the thoughts that we think, the nutrients. We have to do perhaps some testing, what's going on in the gut, what's going on in the adrenals, what's going on in all these areas, to be able to be specific to help you make those changes so you feel better.
Mhm.
So the reality is it's possible.
Yep.
And I don't talk to people on the first visit about the woo-woo. I talk to them when I get to know them a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then I'm able to, but in all the writing I've done, I do help people understand that the ACE score is incredibly important, because we know from the ACE studies
Yep.
that the higher your ACE score, the higher your risk of cancer, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, early
Autoimmune.
retirement and early death, autoimmune. We know that now. We didn't when I first started talking about it, believe it or not, in 1990, 98 about.
Mhm.
So,
But you knew it. You knew it. You could see it in the people you're working with.
yeah, absolutely. We talked about it all the time. No
Mhm.
question.
Okay, the book you mentioned was it is it Me or My Adrenals?
I've got it in all of the books. The
Okay.
chapter in the first book I did is it your issues are in your tissues, was the core balance diet.
Okay,
Yeah,
the core balance diet, is it me or my adrenals, or is it me or my hormones?
three
So,
different books. Yeah.
yeah, three different books. All right. Awesome. So, you talked about helping people take the baby step. Is there like one first baby step that, it always comes first, or does it depend on the person?
Well, to some degree, it depends on the person, but the first place I always start is what are the foods that you're eating?
Mm-hmm.
Because the food is the most powerful drug we have. So understanding, if you're eating Doritos and you put it in a really airtight bag and you leave it on the counter, it will taste probably the same in a month than it does today.
Mm-hmm.
Those are not the foods you want to have.
Yeah.
And those give messages biochemically to the body. So it's really looking at what are the things that you can eat that are fresh, homemade things. And it doesn't have to take a long time. I have an air fryer. I have
Mm-hmm.
a glass air fryer, and it's fast, and it keeps all the nutrients in the food without toxins. Toxins are a huge problem for us. We've had more and more and more in our world, in our environment, and all of those things are giving our body different signals too.
Mm-hmm.
But for people that are just starting this journey, I will say let's stop sugar. You
Yeah.
may want to also then look at gluten and dairy. Those are inflammatory foods, we call that.
Mm-hmm.
And cortisol is also an inflammatory hormone. So it's just understanding that stress and the food that we eat can contribute to our ill health.
Mm-hmm.
Then we move on to, is there one thing in my day that I'm happy about? Is there one thing in my life I can say I'm grateful for? My children, for my partner, for my job, for my, my hairdresser, for, I mean, I'm making stuff up, but those things can begin the journey of me being able to say, you know what? I can change. I can feel a difference.
Mm-hmm.
The more we take out dietarily, the more that we'll feel better.
Right. And, so easy with feeling gratitude to shift that nervous system back, right? I mean, how important is that, getting the nervous system shifted
Huge,
back to a regulated state?
huge. We know that adrenal dysfunction, I call it,
Hmm.
um, contributes to our lack of energy. It contributes to not having our get up and go. It contributes to poor self-esteem. It contributes to low sex drive. It contributes to autoimmune issues. It contributes to thyroid issues, to digestive issues, to osteoporosis, osteopenia. I mean, you name it. There is a relationship, increased chances of metastatic cancers. All of those are connected biochemically. So taking a baby step, and the baby step for you and me might be different. I might say, well, I'm going to stop sugar, or I'm going to stop gluten, or I'm going to stop whatever. The great news for people is now they have so many amazing substitute for gluten, even, baguettes now that are amazing. So we don't have to do what we used to do when my kids were little, when I didn't do gluten with them. It's like, oh my God, that was a long time ago, 35 years ago. So we don't have to do that anymore. It's very, very different.
Yeah, it has gotten easier for sure. So you've got this event coming up, a summit. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I know you've got people on there that are going to be covering these topics in a deeper dive. So tell us a little bit about what the people that you have and the topics people.
Sure, sure, sure. So everything that we spoke about, we have somebody talking about. So the whole summit is about metabolic inflexibility. Why am I not feeling well, basically?
Mm-hmm.
And we have people that are cardiologists saying, we can even shift the cardiac status that you have. We have people that are diabetic specialists. We have people that are hormone specialists. We have people for osteopenia, osteoporosis in terms of their specialty. We have people with mindset, Lise Janelle. We have some experts about kind of lifestyle and exercise. I have people that are also doing lymph drainage, because all these things together can help turn around a system. If we have so much toxicity in our body, we don't ever talk about lymphatic system. What we always say is it's in her lymph glands. Well, we need to talk about things way before that. So Kelly will actually teach people how to do lymph drainage and why it's so important. So we have pretty much everything covered in regards to health issues and some tools that people can use to be able to turn that around.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the goal, is what can you come away from this summit with that can change your health and your life?
Yeah, it sounds like what you're offering people is here's some of the baby steps you can do on your own. And
Right.
so people can decide, okay, I think I can manage to do some lymphatic drainage, for example, or something else that's on there. So I love that you're giving people a variety of choices because, well, what I learned when I did the functional medicine coaching program was that people know what their next best step is for them, what's doable for them, and when they have the information presented. So I love that you're presenting like an array, right? And then something people are going to watch, something's going to catch their attention. They'll know what's the next doable step for them. So beautiful. You want to tell us about the dates when this is happening?
Sure. So many people are promoting it now, so you can sign up now. Website marcellepick.com and sign up. But it's going to be the actual summit itself, in which you can listen to the live recordings, is February 18th through
Mhm.
the 24th.
Right.
And it's called Transform Your Health Summit with Wisdom for Life. So you can look it up there as well.
Okay.
And the goal for me is to teach you as much as I can about what you can do to stay healthy into your 80s and 90s. I'm a ballroom dancer, and many of the people I dance with are 70, 80, and 90. So, and they're still vital and healthy and incredible. So,
I love that. Okay, we're gonna have the link there for people to sign up. So
great.
just go ahead and do it. See what you can find out. I know you've also got some great free gifts as well for when people sign up. Would you like to talk
Absolutely.
about those?
Yeah, so what Wisdom for Life has done is there's two additional kind of giveaways that they have. One is on kind of how our emotions play into our health long term. And the other is a Wisdom for Life, being able to utilize a lot of those things about self-esteem and about self-care, which a lot of women are terrible at. And
Mhm.
those are free gifts as well as, if you sign up for the entire summit, you can get it for $97 with the additional upsells as well. So.
Wonderful. Okay. Now, where is the best? Actually, before I go to that, is there anything we haven't talked about yet that you want to make sure people hear?
I think it is this, and that is that, no matter what your health circumstance is, we can probably give you tools and tips to help you come out on the other side of that. And I'm not saying that if somebody has a very severe genetic disorder that they were born with, that can be shifted, but perhaps even some of the symptoms can get better. But I'm really talking about metabolic inflexibility, blood pressure, cholesterol, osteoporosis, osteopenia, lack of energy, significant pain, all these things. There are steps you can take to really come out on the other side, which would be nice to not feel like this is hopeless.
Yeah. Well, what a beautiful message of hope that is. Now, I always ask my guests, what's one thing someone could do today that's going to shift them into a state of healing in the body, start to initiate healing, because this wellness by design is all about intention. So what is that one baby step? I know we've kind of talked about that, but is there any one thing someone could do like today after they listen to this?
I would stop sugar. I mean, sugar is the most problematic food in our culture. And any food that you have, if it has any added sugar of any kind, and there's many different names for sugar, I would stop that.
Yeah.
And then the next would be, and then that can be a problem as well.
You know what a lot of people don't think about is that sugar is a processed food. Because it's listed as, an ingredient, people think, oh, it's a basic food. It's still a processed food, and it's so inflammatory for our bodies, and it's highly addictive, more addictive than cocaine and other drugs. So yeah, that is beautiful. You have any tips for where to get started on giving up sugar?
Yeah, I mean, there's a product called allulose, and RX Sugar is a company you can look up. They have the little small, it looks like a candy bar, actually. And what I have people do is if they're really hungry for sugar, that will also help stabilize blood sugars, that they just have a little tiny piece of that bar, and that if they're really craving sugar, and that will take the craving away. Or use allulose as your sweetener as opposed to using sugar of any kind. And if you find that you're craving sugar, that's usually an indicator you have gut issues with regards to perhaps even yeast overgrowth, or you have a neurotransmitter or what we call dopamine, the brain chemicals in the brain, that may be low as well, and you may be craving sugar as well when your GABA
Okay.
levels are low. Yeah,
I've had those RX sugar bars, and they are delicious.
I know.
They're
I
so
know,
good.
right? Yeah,
Hard to believe they're pretty much good for you.
I know.
So, okay. And Marcelle, where is the best place for people to follow your work, find out more about
Sure.
you?
So I have a YouTube channel. I'm on Instagram, and my website is marcellepick.com. I've got probably about 1,800 articles there that I've been writing since 2001. So from hormones to adrenals to digestion to weight loss to pretty much everything, I've covered those topics over the years.
Okay. And we'll have those links in the show notes. Marcelle, thank you so much for being on Wellness by Design
Absolutely.
today and just sharing like what a wealth of experience you have. And it's just been added to you. Like you're wise in the beginning, so wise about women's health in the beginning. And now I think the world is kind of catching up with that wisdom that you started with. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing in the world. Thank you so much. All right, we'll see everyone again soon. Thank you so much for being here on Wellness by Design today. Bye for now.